And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. And of course, as always, next to me is my beautiful co host, Laraib, as we are super excited to go into and break down week 16 of the NFL season.
Woo!
We are 3 weeks away from the playoffs. I can't believe we've made it this far, Laraib. I mean, it feels, I'm still used to the 17-week season, so it feels like we're almost there, but we are almost there. Teams have started to clinch, and there's a lot of playoff scenarios, a lot of exciting matchups to get into. Anything you want to say before we hop into this, Rob?
No, man, just another great season that's just flown by. But without further ado, Lewis, like you mentioned, this is a big week for the picks. If you win this week, it'll eventually come down, or hopefully it'll come down to a tie, best case scenario for me. But let's hop into the first game of the week. Lewis, we have the New Orleans Saints going to Cleveland to play the Browns. The line for this game is Cleveland -2, Lewis, and it looked like Deshaun Watson might have been able to massage out some of those kinks in the offense and score 13 points against that vaunted Ravens defense. But the Saints also coming off a great divisional win last week. Now, what do you think the Saints can do in this one to keep their playoff hopes alive?
You need to be able to run the ball against the Cleveland Browns, and the Saints, as of recently, have not been able to run the ball very well. Mark Ingram goes down with an injury. Alvin Kamara hasn't really looked like himself, at least rushing the ball this season. And that means you have to use a lot of Taysom Hill in this game, because this game is going to be 23 degrees, snowing, and according to the feels like temperature, it's going to feel like -9 degrees at certain points of the game. So cold weather, running the ball against the Browns team with Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They're going to bruise this defense. They're going to make you work. But there's not going to be a lot of passes to run. And I think that works in the Saints' favor, because this Browns defense has not been good against the run all season. That middle of their defensive line and their linebacking core has not been very stout whatsoever. We saw, the Ravens really run the ball pretty well against them last week, despite only scoring 3 points. They just couldn't get it done in the red zone. A lot of timely turnovers for the Browns' favor. But this Browns offense has not looked impressive at all since Deshaun Watson has taken over. Their best bet is to force the Saints, who are leading the league in turnovers, to turn the ball over, have some bad penalties, things like that, not to go their way. But I think the Saints can get it done. I like how they can run the ball. I need to see a lot of Taysom Hill this game and just stop Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt from really taking this game over.
Well, Lewis, that's a lot easier said than done, trying to stop those two guys. But the one thing I can't trust in this game, Saints defense, Saints offense, Browns defense, is that the Browns defense, that the Myles Garrett and all those guys, I can trust in them to get some pressure on your boy Andy Dalton in this one. And I really like the Browns, Lewis. I think the rushing attack can get it done, and your Saints finally get knocked out of the playoffs like you've been praying for the past couple of weeks. And so, snowstorm in this game, Lewis, a big snow front or cold front moving across the entire United States. So for a lot of these games, we'll see a little bit of this colder weather. But for this game, I like the Browns 24-21 at home.
I can't believe you. You just named the 4 units, and you said the worst one is the one you can trust the most. The Cleveland defense is the worst ranked unit out of all 4 of those groups. Yet that's the one you trust the most. That just validates this pick even more. I like the Saints on the road. I just think their offense can run the ball effectively. Just get Taysom Hill involved, and the defense will be able to stop the run, because the Cleveland Browns defense has not been able to stop the run all season long. But, to each his own. So I will be taking the Saints in this game on the road. Give me Saints 17 to Cleveland 13. Big running games, probably going to be over by 2:30. But let's move on, Laraib, to another freezing cold matchup. The Buffalo Bills traveling to Chicago to face the Bears. Buffalo favored by 9 points in this game. Yeah, this is just going to be another freezing cold game for Buffalo. They're going to have to start getting used to it. They weren't really running the ball as effectively as I'd like them to in that matchup against the Dolphins on Saturday night. But against this Bears team, they should have more success. But what is your biggest key for the Bills to take a victory here?
Well, Lewis, it's going to be that Bills rushing defense we saw last week against the Miami Dolphins. Raheem Mostert and company were just running all over them, and we're a big reason that the Dolphins were in that game late. And now you're facing Justin Fields, who we know is a great rushing threat, and hopefully Khalil Herbert might be back for the Bears in this one. So him and David Montgomery, it looks like they could keep this game a lot closer than we expect. And Lewis, the Bills, they've only covered in just 1 or 2 of their past 10 games, and so we have these big lines for some of these games. but it really comes down to really, really close in the end. And so I like the Bills to win this one, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the spread thinks, especially with Justin Fields. I know he's a little banged up, but if you can get it done rushing on the ground, I think they can keep it close. And so, it's 11-3 versus 3-11 teams. 11-3 team versus 3-11 teams. So, huge discrepancy there. But I still like the Bills. I like the Bills in this one, 27-20.
Yeah, I just think this is a game where the Bills really capitalized off of missed opportunities for the Bears. The Bears, they've leading the league in fumbles this season. This is a game when you're going to need to run the ball a lot, put a lot on Justin Fields' shoulders. And I feel like, Justin Fields, he's a very tale of two sides type of quarterback, because on one hand, he has these spectacular 50-yard rushes, while on the other hand, he tries to scramble out of a sack, goes 10 yards further back, and, gets sacked for like a 12-yard loss on a key, second down, putting them in an almost impossible situation. And this Bills defense has been really good at getting to the quarterback this season. Even without Von Miller, they're able to create pressure, get Justin Fields out of his spot, and contain him. Matt Milano has been one of the best linebackers in the league at quarterback contain. He's done a very good job. He did a very good job against Lamar Jackson and other scrambling quarterbacks. So I think they will be able to do that in this game. Very low scoring affair. Like you said, the Bills haven't really been blowing anyone out, but they've been winning close games. And this is another just test come playoff time of, a different type of team, a different type of offense that you're facing against as a defense. And for this Bills offense, they shouldn't have much trouble in the passing game. It's just whether or not the passing game will be effective in this matchup, which I think it will. I'm going to go Bills 17 to Bears 3.
Oof. All right, Lewis. Let's move on to another game. We have the Houston Texans facing the Tennessee Titans, who've been sliding a little bit, Lewis. Now, Tennessee -4. And now this is a really, really big game for this team, Lewis. They've lost a couple games, and now the Jaguars are right on their tail for that division lead. And now you're facing the very, very frisky Texans team who kept it close against the Chiefs last week. Now you're at home, Lewis, and I think it all really comes down to Derrick Henry. He played well against the Chargers, but he had a crucial fumble and was, one of the reasons why they lost that game. And now you're facing this Texans team. I think you just really need to get Derrick Henry established. The passing game has not been there all season long, Lewis, but if you can get guys like Austin Hooper involved just a little bit, I think they can eke out a win against a lowly Texans team.
You say lowly Texans team, but they've been giving some of the top teams in the league some pretty big heart attacks. But at the same time, this is a Texans team that clearly has a objective, and that objective is to lose football games. No matter how or how impressive they look at doing it, they will lose the game in the end. The Titans, they've been a real big skid recently. I was impressed in their defense and how they're able to really contain Herbert for the majority of that game, except for like the long pass given up in the end, which honestly just a personnel issue. I don't think the Texans have the passing attack to really take advantage of these Titans, smaller corners, especially with guys like Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins out of this matchup. So I think the Titans will be able to match up strength versus Texans' weakness. They are the worst rushing defense in the league. Derrick Henry loves playing the Texans. He is very effective against them. So, yeah, I think he has a bounce back. Titans have a bounce back. Titans win this game 23 to Texans 10.
All right, Lewis. Yeah, I have to agree. 24-21. Titans bang this one out with Derrick Henry. Well, let's move on to another game. My Seattle Seahawks going to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs -10 in this one, Lewis. And, this is the degree. It says 15-degree Fahrenheit weather for this game. And so that says, Lewis, that says running football. And what the Chiefs have been able to do all year long is run the football. And so I don't like the Seahawks to win this game particularly, Lewis, but I still think they can cover at least. Ken Walker back there, I think they can get the ground game going just a little bit, get some play action incorporated. And this Chiefs team, like you mentioned on our Tuesday podcast, Lewis, they've been winning games, but they've been really, really close. They've been struggling sometimes to pass the ball. They found something in Jared McKinnon here, Lewis, and we'll see what he can do against a really bad Seahawks front seven.
I disagree with you, Laraib. Not in the fact that I think the Seahawks are going to win, but I disagree in the fact that you think it's going to be a heavy running game. These are two of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, in the Seahawks and the Chiefs, and two of the better passing offenses in the NFL for both these teams. I think this will be a high-scoring affair. Yes, it's cold. Yes, you want to run the ball. But honestly, both these running games have not been very effective in the last few weeks. But I do think that, against these corners, and Tariq Woolen, he's been having a great season, but the rest of the Seahawks pass defense has been very shoddy. And this Chiefs pass defense has been one of the worst in the NFL this season, and they just have not been able to create pressure. I think the Seahawks offensive line is a big test for them on the road for a lot of these young guys. against Frank Clark, Chris Jones. But this Chiefs defensive front has not been able to really create pressure that much in these past few weeks either. So I think the Seahawks can find a lot of success in the passing game. And I think this is going to be a very high scoring game, Laraib. I just think with both these, high octane offenses, these receivers on the outside for the Seahawks are going to have their way with these corners for the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs win this game, but it's going to be very high scoring. I'm going to go Chiefs 34 to Seahawks 28 and a very, very exciting matchup.
Yeah, Lewis, one quick note on this. I think Tyler Lockett has a broken finger, so he might be most likely to be out for this game. So it's going to be on DK Metcalf and Marquise Goodwin to pick up the slack in this one. But I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring than you. I think the rushing attack will be a little bit more prevalent in this game, especially with just how bad the Seahawks rush defense is. And so I like the Chiefs 27-21. But let's move on to another game. We have the New York Giants going to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Now, this Vikings team, Lewis, have been the comeback kids this year. 10 of their games have been one score. They've had a bunch of fourth quarter comebacks. And then on the other side, you see this Giants team who's also been, a sort of, comeback kid. They had to come back in a lot of the games earlier in the season. They were reeling a little bit, Lewis, but it looks like they got their mojo back. Saquon Barkley had an absolute masterclass against the Commanders and was a big reason they were able to put that game away late. And now they're facing this Vikings team, Lewis, on the road. Who do you like in this matchup?
This game is kind of gross, honestly, because the Giants are a team that if they're down in the game, hard for them to come back with just the people on their team, the personnel. But the Vikings, if they get down, we know they can come back. But this is a game the Giants also have a really good situational defense that forces you into field goals, forces you into third and longs, things like that, to where, I don't know, I just don't really have a great feel for this game. I think the Vikings are going to win just because they're home, and the Giants just came off a really emotional game against the Commanders last week. They might kind of fall down back to earth. And the Vikings, yes, they also had a very emotional game, but extra day of rest for them. I think that game kind of gave them a new focus, a new realization of their potential this season. Because if you lose that game, it feels like this is just a season over. But now after that game, they realize they can beat anyone. And a team that comes back from a deficit like that, they have a mindset that no one can beat them in the league because they've defeated insurmountable odds. So no matter who is on that field, they can pull it off. So I like the Vikings in this one, not with much confidence. I'll say that right now. I think the matchups in this game are pretty lopsided in both ways. I don't like this Vikings pass defense. I don't like this Giants, passing offense. So it's going to be kind of boring on that side of the ball. The lesser of two evils will prevail in that one. But I do like the Vikings in this matchup, Laraib.
Well, Lewis, I'm sort of leaning the other way. Now, the Vikings have had 3 losses this year, and all of those losses they've given up 130 yards on the ground. Now, a rushing team with Daniel Jones rushing the ball at quarterback and Saquon Barkley looking like he did last week. I really like this Giants team on the road, Lewis, and they're going to be my upset of the week. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. The two teams are going to tough it out. And for this Vikings team, I know you talk about their mental, they come back from this huge deficit, but you're not going to be playing Matt Ryan and the Colts every single week and Jeff Saturday on Saturday, even though this game is on a Saturday. So I like the Giants in this one. I think Saquon Barkley, if he has, a little bit of the same, mojo he did against the Commanders, I think they can win this game. And especially, a big win like this will really, really secure their spot for the wild card. And so I like the Giants 24-21.
And I like the Vikings this one, 24-23, walk-off by Greg Joseph. Yeah, it's not going to be a pretty game. But let's move on, Laraib, to our next 12 o'clock game on Saturday. We have the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to New England to face the Patriots. Cincinnati favored by 3 on the road. Patriots coming off one of the most embarrassing losses of the season. You can argue the Colts was a bit more embarrassing last week, but the end of that game was just so poorly handled, so badly coached that you wouldn't even believe it was Bill Belichick on the sideline coaching this team, given his track record. So, Laraib, we've seen this Patriots team over and over again throughout our lives. Whenever there's a disappointing loss, they come back, reinvigorated, locked in, on to Cincinnati is the famous quote, and that's the situation this week. Do the Patriots have the mental edge in this ball game?
I don't think so, Lewis. Like you just mentioned, we've seen the Patriots for the past 2 decades. They've always been a team that's very well coached, that's very, they don't make any mistakes. And now the past 2 seasons, they've had Mac Jones at quarterback. guys coming in and out. You lose Josh McDaniels, you bring in Matt Patricia as your offensive coordinator, and they've just been uncharacteristically sloppy, Lewis. So many bad, holding calls, pass interference, just that stupid play like you just mentioned. And now you're facing the hottest team in the AFC, in my opinion, in the Cincinnati Bengals, Lewis. I really think this -3 line is really too low for this team. Like I said last week against the Buccaneers, and they're only -3.5 on the road, that one was also too low. And I have to say, this is also too low. So I really like this Bengals team to go in to New England and just dominate a Patriots team who's been really sloppy all year long.
Yeah, I mean, this is a spot in which I really like taking the Patriots, normally coming off a loss at home. There's a lot of things that favor them in this matchup. But when I think about the purely football side of this, when you talk about this Patriots offense going up against Lou Anarumo and this Bengals defense, I think it's a complete mismatch to the Bengals' favor. You cannot run the ball on this Bengals team, and they're missing, their star corner for the Bengals, Chidobe Awuzie. He's been out for the entire season. But I don't think the Patriots have the personnel to really exploit that in this game. So there's just a lot of things going against the Patriots. And I think this Bengals offense can do just enough to really, I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think this Patriots defense matches up pretty well against this Bengals team. But these big physical receivers for the Bengals are going to be a huge matchup problem for the Patriots because their Patriots, they have these really fast, small corners who are very smart and play very instinctual. So they get a lot to the ball. But when they're matched up one-on-one on the outside with a T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, it's going to be a complete mismatch that Joe Burrow will exploit all game. You have 5'9" Jack Jones, like 5'10" Jonathan Jones on the other side. These corners cannot match up with the Bengals wide receivers. So I do like the Bengals. I agree with you in this ball game. I'm going to go Cincinnati 23 to New England. I'm going to go 14.
Yeah, and when you're facing 6'4" and 220 pounds T. Higgins, it's not going to be a fun matchup for those Patriots corners out there. And so I'm taking the Bengals as well, Lewis. 27-21. The Bengals win another outstanding game. But let's move on to another game. We have the Detroit Lions facing the Carolina Panthers. Now, this is another big game with a lot of playoff implications. You have Detroit -2.5 on the road, Lewis. Who are you favoring in this game?
I mean, you have to go with the hottest team in the NFL and the Detroit Lions, in my opinion. The Panthers just had a really, really disappointing home loss against the Steelers last week, in which Mitch Trubisky just played, well against them. It was such a strange game. Sam Darnold, it wasn't like he was playing bad. It was just missed opportunity after missed opportunity, in striking distance against the Steelers team, and they just could not run the ball whatsoever against that Steelers front. Now, will that be the same against this Lions? No, I think they will be able to run the ball a lot more effectively. However, this is a much more potent offense with the Lions than they faced last week against the Steelers. So the Lions are going to put a lot more pressure on this Panthers team, and they have one of the best offensive lines in the football. So I don't think that the Panthers defensive line will be able to get much pressure on Jared Goff, who's been playing outstanding this season. And out of all the games, in the NFL this week, a lot of really cold outdoor games. This game, 34 degrees. It's not going to feel that bad. I do like Jared Goff in this environment, so I'm going to go with the Panthers in this matchup. I mean, the Lions, excuse me.
Yeah, I just want to ask you a quick question, Lewis. I know last week you were a little hesitant on picking Jared Goff and the Lions when facing that Jets defense outside. Do you have a little bit more confidence in him after he goes out there? He doesn't play the greatest game of all time, but he doesn't have any costly turnovers, and they're able to eke out a win in that one.
Yeah, absolutely, because the biggest thing he did was game manage. He didn't put the team in any trouble, but this is a game in which he didn't have to really pull off anything spectacular. And there were a lot of drives, 3 and outs, throwing the ball out of bounds on a 3rd and 10, even though you might be able to get something if you try to force it in. But he was playing smart football, just purely game managing. And that was what you needed to do on the road against an offense like that. In this game, however, I think he's going to have to take more risks and play in a faster pace against this Panthers offense, what I think is going to be more effective in Carolina, despite the weather conditions. So it didn't exactly dispel what I thought about Jared Goff in the outdoors beforehand, because I don't think this defense is is that good. But if they face a team in the playoffs, like going to, just for example, like if they went to Chicago in the playoffs in that cold weather, I think he'd have a lot more trouble. But this is a game that I do like the matchup for him.
Yeah, and I completely agree. This Lions team, they've been battling for the past 7-8 weeks, Lewis. And now if they want to get into the wild card spot, they're going to have to win out. And so I really like them against this Panthers team who struggled last week against the Steelers, like you mentioned. And so I'll be taking the Lions 27-21.
All right. And then I will be taking the Lions in this game. I'm going to go a little bit lower in scoring. I'm going to go 24 to Panthers 16. I just think that, I think they'll be able to run the ball. Jamal Williams to get a few tutties on the ground. And this Panthers offense really never gets a rhythm going in this game. It could be interesting, though. We saw the Panthers go into Seattle a few weeks ago and give them a real fight. So you never really know what you're going to get out of this Panthers team. My bad. I didn't mean to bring that up. I'm just citing examples here, NFL analysts, But let's move on, Laraib, to the Battle of the Birds. We have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Baltimore to face the Ravens. Baltimore favored by 7 in this game. Desmond Ridder did not have a very good start to the season in New Orleans last week. He had a few, really bad balls. One of them intercepted. He had an interception called back and a pick six that was dropped. That was just an awful pass by Ridder. He did have some decent moments, though, and the running game really got unlocked with Tyler Algier having a very big game on the ground last week. But this game is in Baltimore against a great defense. What do you think the Falcons can do, and what do you think Desmond Ridder can do to have a chance against this Baltimore team, Laraib?
Well, Lewis, it's been really questionable about how the Falcons threw him in there. I know they came off the bye week 2 weeks ago, or last week facing the Saints, but talk about having to play on the road in Caesars Stadium, with the Saints rocking against the Falcons on a rival week. And now you're facing the Ravens on the road again, playing over there in Baltimore. Those fans are going to be rowdy. And like you mentioned, Lewis, he was really, really shaky in that game, having some really bad throws. So I think what's the key for him in this one, and what's been the Falcons, identity all season long, has just been running the ball. If they can get some play action, if they can establish the run and get some play action boot, get him out of the pocket a little bit, and get him a little bit more comfortable back there, then maybe they have a shot in this game with Lamar Jackson back. And this Ravens team who just lost the division lead, I think the Ravens are really, really going to be amped up for the rest of the season, trying to get that, that division title back. And so for the Ravens team with Lamar Jackson back, I think they just dominate the Falcons team on both sides of the ball, and they get a win in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think, you're asking a lot from a rookie quarterback, to go on the road in New Orleans and then immediately to go on the road to face Baltimore and this defense, which has been basically the unit for this Baltimore team while Lamar Jackson has been out. So it's going to be a huge ask to go on the road and do as much as you did, even rushing the ball. Like, I don't think Tyler Algier is going to have insane rushing yards against the Falcons this week. So it's going to be a tall order for the Falcons to really pull off the upset here. And yes, like you said, with Lamar Jackson coming back, the Ravens start to get their identity and get some good momentum going towards the playoffs. So I agree with you. I do like the Ravens in this matchup. I'm going to go Ravens 20 to Falcons 10 in this game. But let's move on, Laraib, to our next game, a 3:00 game on Saturday. We have the Washington Football Commanders traveling to Santa Clara to face the 49ers. San Francisco is favored by 7 points in this game. The Commanders lose a pretty disappointing game at home last week, a game they really needed. Meanwhile, the 49ers coming off a dominant performance against the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. Extra rest, everything going into it. Is this a game? I'm going to ask you this. Which of these teams needs this game more, and will that ultimately play a factor in who wins this game, Laraib?
Well, the team who needs this game more, in my opinion, it has to be the Commanders, right? They have the 7th seed, in the 7th seed right now, but a lot of teams on their tail, Lewis, the Seahawks, the Lions, and even the Packers are still in the mix. And so, if they want to keep a lead, it's going to be, having to win a couple more games out of their last 3. But facing the number 1 defense of the 49ers, Lewis, who can still take the number 2 seed, I think the 49ers dominate in this game on all aspects. Brock Purdy has looked really, really impressive, Lewis. Playing clean football, no turnovers, getting it to his guys, and just being a game manager is what he really needs to do. And when you have that great 49ers defense, that's all you really need to do. And that's what he's been doing. And I think he continues that in this one. And I like the 49ers to dominate a Commanders team who fell last week.
Yeah, the matchup is really bad here for the Commanders, especially on the road. Now, yes, the 49ers, they've clinched. They clinched the division. They look pretty good for securing that 3 seed and potentially could jump up to the 2 seed if the Vikings lose this week. So I think they are playing for something. It's not like they're already starting to look to rest their starters and take a team lightly. The Commanders team has been a team all season that, has shown a lot of grit. And, a lot of people are saying they got screwed over on that Sunday night game, which, it is what it is. You can't beat the refs, right? But then again, you put yourself in a position to lose with bad officiating. So it's a hard excuse, as always, to make it seem like you're a better team, in which this is honestly a mismatch, in my opinion. I think the 49ers handle the Commanders, especially on the ground. And then, the Commanders might be able to do something with their dynamic receivers, outside. But I just don't think Taylor Heineke is that dynamic of a quarterback to really stretch a defense out. I think he's a fun quarterback. He's a gritty quarterback, a good story. But, maybe if they have Carson Wentz, they win this game. But I guess they want to miss the playoffs this season. So, it is what it is. I also like the 49ers in this matchup, Laraib. I'm going to go 49ers 28 to Commanders 17.
Yeah, and I'll pick the 49ers 24-13. But Lewis, let's move on to another matchup. A big matchup that we expected would be a lot more, entertaining than it might actually be. With the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Jalen Hurts is in question for this game. Not officially ruled out, but it looks like Gardner Minshew most likely will be the starter in this one, Lewis. Now, this Cowboys team coming off a bad week last week, Lewis. What do you think they can do to win this game against a shorthanded Eagles team at home?
They need to be able to stop the run, and that will be a much easier task, like you said, if Jalen Hurts misses this game, which we both believe he will, and Vegas believes that as well with the -5 line. They need to be able to stop Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, and this Eagles rushing attack because, you throw Gardner Minshew out there on the road, and if he's put in positions, and he's not a bad quarterback. I actually like him as a backup quarterback, but if he's put in positions, 3rd and longs, things like that, against this Cowboys pass rush, he's going to have a hard time. However, the Cowboys' biggest disadvantage in this game is their secondary, which has been banged up, beat up, and honestly taken advantage of in these past few weeks against the Texans and the Jaguars. And I think this is going to be a huge game for A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, because I honestly think Gardner Minshew is a more polished passer than Jalen Hurts. But, at the same time, he hasn't had the rapport that Jalen Hurts has built up with these guys. So a huge thing in this game is how connected is Gardner Minshew going to be with these top flight receivers for the Eagles? And Jalen Hurts, he's a tough guy. It was his non-throwing shoulder he injured. I think it's a precautionary thing. If this was a playoff game, he would play, but he might even play in this game. But I just love the matchup purely for the defense, the Eagles offense on this side of the ball. But I want to ask you a question, Laraib. This Cowboys offense, we've seen them, just very bipolar. They're having great drives, connecting, running the ball well with, getting a lot of big plays out of guys like CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott. So, but against this Eagles defense, how much success are they going to have? And are we going to see just a lot of imbalances and consistency with this Cowboys offense?
Well, Lewis, yeah, I have to agree with you. That's something that very well could happen in this game. But last week they put up 34 points against the Jaguars. Lewis, it's not like they just fell completely flat. It was really on the defense. And that's what I'm looking at the key for this game. I think they're really going to get up for this one. I said on the Tuesday pod, this defense, they have a lot of guys who like to run their mouth. They have a lot of swagger. And sometimes they just let their foot off the gas pedal. But in this one, I think they're going to be going hard. They're going to be after Gardner Minshew all game long. And I think the Cowboys defense is a difference in this one and what I think is going to be a really close game.
Well, I disagree with you, Laraib. I think the Eagles are a better team. They've been a better team all season and just a more consistent, well-coached team. I think Sirianni is really good in certain situations at just managing clock and handling late game situations. And if this game does come down to a one-possession game late in the fourth quarter, I trust this Eagles team, even without Jalen Hurts, against Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, who we saw just make so many mistakes in that game last week. And I never really trust them in these big spots. And for the Cowboys, it's always been what can go wrong will go wrong. And that's what's going to happen in this game. I think the Eagles take this one on the road and secure the #1 seed and the best record in the NFL with the win next week. So I do have the Eagles. I'm going to go Eagles 26 to Cowboys 23. And it's a late score by the Cowboys that makes it look closer than it is, Laraib.
And I am going to pick the Cowboys at home in Jerry World on Christmas Day. On Christmas Eve. The Cowboys show out. Defense shows up, and they're hyped up for this one, Lewis. I like the Cowboys 27-24 at home. But Lewis, let's move on to another Christmas Eve game at night. We have the Las Vegas Raiders coming off a great win, going to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. Now, these two teams have some great history, Lewis, but in this one, who are you favoring?
I am favoring the Las Vegas Raiders on the road. I think that, this is a team with just so much talent offensively. You saw that, oh my gosh, the tight end, what's his name? I feel like an
Aaron
idiot.
Waller.
Darren Waller, he came back last week and had an immediate impact, scoring a touchdown. And this offense just looks so much more dynamic with him and Renfro back in the lineup against a good Patriots defense. Now, this is a tall order against the Steelers on the road, but this Steelers offense just really hasn't been that impressive to me. As dynamic and as Mitch Trubisky, I just think this is a tall order for them to keep score because this Raiders defense isn't that impressive. But I think they will be able to get a pass rush onto Mitch Trubisky. And Trubisky, under pressure, under a blitz, I think he will fold in this game. I like the matchup for the Raiders, and I think they're going to be able to do so much offensively with all the weapons back. And Josh Jacobs will allow them to really, run the ball. And yes, this is a good Steelers run defense, no doubt about it. They shut down the Panthers last week. But the Raiders just need to get a decent running game going to unlock the passing game to where guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith can't just tee off against Derek Carr like they've been able to do against a lot of other quarterbacks this season. So I like the Raiders in this matchup, Rob.
Yeah, Lewis, and I have to agree with you. I think the two difference maker in this games is going to be Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. If they get in Kenny Pickett's or Mitch Trubisky's face, whichever one is starting at quarterback, just disrupts them, causes some turnovers. I think the Raiders can win this one. Like you mentioned, just having all their guys back, Lewis, is a really, really talented roster who just haven't been able to put it together all season long. But in this one against the Steelers on Christmas Eve, after an amazing win last week, I think they can get it done in a low-scoring game. And so I like the Raiders 24-21 on the road.
Yep, and I like the Raiders. I'm going to go a bit higher scoring. I'm going to go 27-23. Raiders get it done, and all their fans are doing are kicking themselves for all the other mistakes they made in the season when they look back at the season and missed the playoffs at like 9-8, and they're going to be very sad, as will I, because I picked them to make the playoffs. But let's move on to our Sunday Christmas Day games, Laraib. We have our first one at noon. Packers at the Dolphins. Miami favored by 4. And this is a 65-degree, beautiful weather down in South Beach game for the Dolphins. I bet the Packers are going to love it after being in Lambeau for the past few weeks, Laraib. What's the biggest matchup for you in this game? Because we saw last week against the Packers, or what's the biggest advantage the Dolphins offense is going to have against this Packers defense?
The biggest advantage, Lewis, in my opinion, is going to be the rushing attack. It really came alive last week. I know you have Jalen Waddle and Tua on the outside, but last week it was Raheem Mostert and the big runs that he had against that Bills defense. I think if they can have some of them more success in this one against the Packers, it really opens up the play action. They had a huge touchdown to Jalen Waddle off of play action last week. And so if they can continue that against the Packers, I think they have a really good shot at winning this game. But I'm not completely counting the Packers out in this one, Lewis. I know, they're 6-8 record. They've been up and down all season long, but they still have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. And however bad he has been this season, he's still a Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course, Romeo Doubs came back last week and he played very well. And so I like the Dolphins this one, Lewis, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people expect.
Yeah, I mean, this was honestly a weird one to predict because this Packers team has just been such a weird team to predict all season because this is a game in a spot where it's like, man, they've been playing kind of well. They've been running the ball pretty effectively against the Dolphins defense, which has been not impressive at all. That was a huge opportunity in Buffalo, and they just could not get off the field on third downs whatsoever. So you look at this Packers offense, and you're like, with Aaron Rodgers, they should be able to really have an advantage in this ball game in these situations. Aaron Rodgers, he's getting more of a rapport with those receivers. He's starting to figure things out. And, this is a game in Miami that I think the Packers players are really going to get up for because, they're getting back into their element. But in terms of who needs this game more, I think the Dolphins do. But I'm going with the Packers in this ball game. I'm thinking about it right now. I think they're going to be able to run the ball super effectively. We saw A.J. Dillon have a monster game against the Rams last week, and just that running back duo is going to cause so much havoc against this Miami Dolphins defense. And you mentioned it. With Jeff Wilson out, they ran the ball well against the Bills, but I just don't think they can consistently run the ball that effectively. And yes, the speed on the outside is terrifying, but the Packers do have a pass rush. Rashawn Gary is, a formidable pass rusher as well as Preston Smith. And if they're able to pressure Tua and get guys like Jair Alexander locked up on a Jalen Waddle or a Tyreek Hill, they could take away that part of the field because that's how impressive Jair Alexander is as a cornerback. So you just need to force all your other resources on the other receiver and get the pressure on get the pressure on Tua, force him up, speed him up. And I think this is a game the Packers have distinct advantages in. They start feeling nice and fresh in that warm weather, rejuvenates them, and they get a win on the road. And watch out now, because the Packers that we wrote a eulogy for might be waking up from the dead, Laraib. But that's why I'm picking the Packers in this ball game. I'm going to go 26-23. Packers win the ball game.
And I'm going to lean the other way, Lewis. I really like Mike McDaniels. I think he has a coaching masterclass in this one against Matt LaFleur. And the Dolphins win a crucial game that keeps them in the AFC playoffs. And so I like the Dolphins 27-24 in a huge victory that Tua puts on a statement in, Lewis. Well, let's move on to another game. But before we move on to these, the other two Christmas games, Lewis, I just want to say that we will be watching none of these games. We'll be watching the NBA on Christmas Day because these are all just garbage games. But next up, we have the.
I will say that noon game is going to be exciting. I'll say that matchup, Aaron Rodgers, Tua in Miami, that's going to be a fun one. But let's move on to the next two, Laurent.
Next up, we have the Denver Broncos going to Los Angeles to play the Rams. Denver is -2.5 in this one, Lewis. And that's the way that I'm leaning. With Russell Wilson back, and that defense has been great all season long. They destroyed the Cardinals last week, and now you face a Rams team with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. I think you get some pressure on him with some of those edge rushers. And Russell Wilson against the Chiefs, Lewis, he played really well. He had 3 touchdown passes to Jerry Jeudy, and he kind of looked like his former self. And so, I like them in this game to dominate on Christmas Day.
Yeah, and for me, Laraib, I just think Boston's defense against Giannis, it's really about packing the pace. Oh. And, if Rob Williams, with him back, it's just really about, I'm sorry. That's the 4:00 game that I'll be watching. About the Rams and Denver. I like the Rams are exciting now with Baker Mayfield. They are kind of watchable, but I just think there's too many guys down on this Rams roster. They lose another left tackle. Running backs are injured. And this Broncos defense has still been one of the most formidable units. Shout out to Brandon Browning. I think that's his name. The edge rusher for the Broncos that they felt so comfortable in, and letting a guy like Bradley Chubb leave. He's been super effective for them this season. And, I just think they can get a little bit more going. They had a decent offensive showing against the Cardinals last week. I think they can do it again. I do like the Broncos in this matchup. I'm going to go Broncos 20 to Rams 10.
Yeah, for sure, Lewis. Definitely going to be a low-scoring game that all of us are going to be watching. I'm going to pick the Broncos just like you, 13-10. But let's move on to Christmas night game, Lewis. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Tom Brady facing the Arizona Cardinals with Trace McSorley. Battle of the two TikTok quarterbacks in this one. And, there's not really much to say, with Trace McSorley at quarterback for the Cardinals. I don't think they're going to be getting anything done on the outside, even with DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown out there. And on the other side, Tom Brady, as bad as this Bucs team has been all season long, when you're facing one of the worst defenses in the NFL, I think they'll win this game, Lewis, and, basically lock up their playoff spot.
Yeah, I think, this is just a mismatch with the Buccaneers defense. I think they absolutely shut down this Cardinals team. Yeah, it's a really disappointing season for the Cardinals, but you can't ask Trace McSorley to beat Tom Brady. If he does, it's going to be a huge indictment on this Buccaneers season. And if they lose, they don't even deserve to be a playoff team. I don't care if they win this crappy division, but I do like the Bucs in this one. They have to win this game. Big primetime matchup on Christmas. I guess the schedule makers thought this would be a lot more exciting game than it is, but I do like the Bucs. I'm going to go Bucs 21 to Cardinals 13. It never really feels close.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I'll pick the Bucs 24 to Cardinals 13, Lewis. Well, that will conclude the Sunday games. Well, let's move on to Monday Night Football. We have the Los Angeles Chargers, who've been kind of sneaky hot, Lewis, facing this Colts team who just blew the biggest lead in NFL history. Now, I'm really, really leaning the Chargers in this game, Lewis. Nick Foles is going to be starting at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor's done for the rest of the season. The psyche for this team is completely down the drain after that huge loss last week. I think the Chargers dominate in this one and get a much-needed win that get them into the playoffs, Lewis.
Yeah, I agree with you, Laraib. I've been extremely impressed with this Chargers defense the past few weeks. Shutting down a guy like Derrick Henry and then playing very well against the Dolphins. And I thought, those would be two matchups for the defense that would really expose this Chargers defense. But they've held strong. Brandon Staley is really starting to get his imprint on this defense. They're playing very well.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. It is what it is. I can't get their first round pick. Hey, the Cardinals have a better first round pick, so Sean Payton will help us in that regard. But I think he's been coaching very well. And that's the thing about guys who are specialists, like former coordinators who become coaches. The biggest thing is fix your side of the ball. So a guy like Mike McDaniel, you're an offensive guy. You go to the Dolphins, you fix your side of the ball quickly. Brandon Staley, he's a defensive guy. So when he was hired by the Chargers, they expected his defense to turn around like that. But it took him some time. And if this is the defense we're seeing out of the Chargers, all of a sudden they're a very scary team. And yeah, Nick Foles and the Colts aren't going to be able to do much against this Chargers team. Even if the Chargers defense isn't that impressive, the Chargers offense will make up for it. And they're going to win this game. And they are going to clinch a playoff spot with a win here, which is going to be huge for the Chargers. So I think that they win this game. I'm going to go Chargers 27 to Colts 20.
And I'm going to also pick the Chargers 27-17. And my boy Justin Herbert gets into the playoffs finally.
Woo! Let's see what he can do. But, Laraib, that'll do it for this week's picks. That is all the games we have. A huge week that we just went through. But before we go, we need to go through our locks, upsets, and best bets of the week. Laraib, start us off with your first lock of the week.
With my lock of the week, Lewis, I'm going to double dip in this one. I like the Bengals. I picked them last week on the road against the Buccaneers. I'm going to pick them again once again this week against the Patriots team. The line is only -3. This Patriots team has been sloppy the past couple seasons as soon as Tom Brady left. And I think they mess up against this one against the hottest team in the AFC.
Yep. And my lock is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football. I think, just against Nick Foles and just the Jeff Saturday experience, I don't know how this Colts team is going to have any energy to compete in this one. So I do like the Chargers on the road as my lock of the week. And for upsets of the week, my upset of the week is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles going into Dallas. And despite everything, no Jalen Hurts, I just think they're a better roster, a bit more, a better coach team, and they're going to win a tough road game and lock up the number 1 seed and best record in the NFL to someone's very happiness.
And for my upset of the week, I'm going to pick the New York Football Giants facing the Minnesota Vikings, who have all 3 losses on the season. They've given up 130 yards. Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, you know what to do. Just rush for 130 yards and you win this game. And so I like the Giants on the road against a shaky Vikings team.
All right, let's move on to our best bets of the week. I had some trouble thinking about this one, but I landed on the Seahawks-Chiefs game over/under. I'm going over 49 points. Both potent passing offenses, not great passing defenses. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. And unfortunately, the Chiefs will end up winning this to your chagrin.
Well, we'll see about that. But for my best bet of the week, Lewis, I'm double dipping once again. I'm quadruple dipping. I'm picking the Bengals at -3, facing an inferior opponent in the Patriots. I think they can really get it done. Like you said, just a mismatch they have on the outside, and that rushing defense is just astute. And so when you're facing a team with only Ramondre Stevenson as their best offensive weapon, I think they shut them down and they win by a very big margin.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Make sure you check out all these games for this weekend. It's going to be super exciting. We're going to have a huge playoff preview breakdown going into next episode with every team in the NFL having only 2 games remaining. So we're super excited to bring that to you next week and have very happy holidays. Again, like always, our links are in our socials below. So make sure you check all of that out. Anything you want to say before we head out, Laraib?
No, I think that's the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.